Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Amaia was furious with indignation and resentment. 2 hours ago, the woman found out that her husband had a mistress. A private detective hired by Amaia a couple of weeks ago had provided the information. "I will never forgive you. I'll leave you with nothing, sweetheart." Tears choked Amaia. She couldn't understand how her husband Antonio could cheat on her. After all, they had been married for 10 years, even though they had no children. But still, he did it. The woman realized that over the past few months, her husband always came home tired and irritable. He could even just not come home, just sending a text message like "I'm busy" or "need to stay at the office tonight, too much work." Or didn't pick up the phone and didn't think it was necessary to answer her messages. "Amaia, aren't you tired of bothering me when I have a lot of problems with my business? How am I supposed to provide for us if you bother me every minute because of your paranoia?" Antonio tiredly replied to the claims of his beloved. "But you can't be busy working 24 hours a day," Amaia said indignantly. "You and I stopped going out together long ago. We almost do not communicate with anyone. Tell me, when was the last time you talked to me? Can't you remember? And I can't either, because it's been a long time. When was the last time you were in bed with me? Do you remember? Why are you messing with me?" Antonio started yelling. "You're not the one in charge of this company. It's taking all my energy. I want to go home and relax in silence. But I can't. I can't cross the threshold without you starting hysterics. All I can do is sleep on the couch in my own office. This is the only chance to have a moment in silence." These scandals had been repeated many times, and then again and again. Amaia realized that her family life could soon come to an end. And she desperately didn't want that to happen. He'd been having these business meetings for a year now, she complained to her friend Clara. Business meetings, after which he doesn't even come home. He gets so busy that he has no energy left. "But what can you do?" she asked shrewdly. "You have no actual evidence of his infidelity. The fact that he doesn't want to spend time with you and frequently mentions fatigue isn't absolute evidence of adultery." "That's true," Amaia admitted. "But what am I supposed to do? Should I follow him or what? I tried to check his phone, but it didn't work." "Did he use a password to secure the phone?" Clara guessed. "You can only unlock it with his fingerprint," Amaia grinned. "That's the kind of trust we have between us. Oh, he's had that lock on for about a year now. I don't think it's okay, you know." "Yeah, right," her friend said. "But it's still meaningless without proof." The women discussed why and how this could happen. But they both knew that they needed proof. Amaia was at home watching another show when the phone rang. It was Antonio, who spoke hurriedly. "Amaia, don't wait for me tonight. I'm going to be late. So just go to bed." He hung up before his wife could ask, "What is it this time?" The woman was on edge. Gloomily looking in the mirror and seeing a real fury there, the woman changed her clothes and went out into the front yard where her car was parked. Amaia was a good driver. She had learned how to drive before she was married. So the first gift her husband gave her on their first anniversary was an expensive car, which Amaia drove for a couple of years and then asked for a new one. Her husband fulfilled her whims without asking any questions. She wanted it, so that's the way it should be. Scowling, Amaia got in the car and headed to Antonio's office. She knew the address very well. She was there many times. It was a high-rise building made of glass and concrete downtown. Antonio would not have agreed to any other option. He wanted to always make a strong impression on those around him. At the sight of Amaia entering the building, a guard rushed to her. "Excuse me, madam, do you have a pass?" "What the hell are you talking about? I'm the wife of the company owner. So please get away from me." Amaia snarled back. "And don't you dare let him know I'm coming. I want to surprise my husband." She took the elevator to the top floor and walked confidently to her husband's office, which was located at the end of a long, wide corridor. There was no one in the office except Antonio, who looked like he was working hard instead of all his employees. Listening, the woman could detect the soft laughter and muffled voice of Antonio. There was someone else with him. Amaia opened the door sharply, and her eyes saw a shocking scene. A beautiful girl, 15 years younger than her husband, was sitting on the edge of her husband's desk. Her long slim legs were barely covered by a sexy dress with a slit on the thigh. The thin waist and other curves of her body were emphasized by the tight dress. Antonio was holding his hands on her thighs and smiling softly at her. "What does it mean?" Amaia was shocked. "I guess that's the reason you're staying at the office overnight. Is this your overtime work, requiring an urgent presence? Who is this girl?" "Amaia, please don't come to my office without telling me, it's rude." The man replied coldly, with no embarrassment at all. "Yes, I had to stay late, and I warned you about it. And you came here and made a scandal. You should go home. Don't ruin the mood for all of us. I'm tired enough and I don't want to discuss anything with you right now. Let's talk later." The girl continued to sit on the table, not even bothering to look at Antonio's wife as if she was just a piece of furniture. Angry and resentful, Amaia stepped closer and slapped her husband in the face. "How could you do this? Aren't you ashamed of your behavior?" she whispered. Antonio laughed, but she saw the hidden rage in his eyes and stepped back. "What should make me ashamed of? That I enjoy spending time not in your company with your perpetually sad and irritated face, but with a young sexy beauty? What's wrong with that? What did you see other than a girl sitting on a table? Where is the incredible debauchery here that you've painted in your sick imagination?" "Yeah, it's no big deal," Amaia hissed, looking at the couple. "It's very mundane. I'm surprised she's not naked." "You're being overdramatic again." Her husband grinned, and she could hear the sound of contempt in his voice. "Fuck you." Not knowing what to say, Amaia walked out of the office. She almost ran down the hall, unable to control her anger with indignation. Yes, that young bitch is really gorgeous. But it was so humiliating and hurtful to realize that her husband was looking at another woman and mocking his wife in front of her rival, who was sitting with the look of a queen. After going downstairs, Amaia struggled to pull herself together and went to Clara's house. She was always aware of her family's affairs and could help her with wise advice when Amaia needed it. "Clara, can I come to you now, please?" Amaia's voice trembled. She immediately realized that something had happened again. "Of course, come. Will you stay the night?" she asked sympathetically. Amaia thought for a moment. Antonio wasn't going home anyway, so no one would be waiting for her at home anyway. She decided to stay at her friend's place. Clara prepared for her arrival. She ordered a couple of large pizzas and took a bottle of red wine out of the fridge. "This is our favorite remedy for any misfortune," the woman said cheerfully, showing that she had everything ready. Amaia smiled sadly. If only it were that easy to solve this problem with just pizza and wine. "But that's just the beginning," Clara replied. "After that, you and I will think it over and make a plan, and then it doesn't matter what happens. Right?" Sitting on a cozy sofa with a slice of pizza in her hands, Amaia told in detail about the scene she had seen in Antonio's office. What depressed her most was the realization that her husband didn't care about her reaction. And also the disdainful behavior of his mistress, who did not even turn her head in her direction. "Just imagine," Amaia said angrily, taking a big sip of wine. She was sitting there in front of him with her thighs almost naked. She thinks she's a sex bomb. It was so humiliating. He's having fun with this girl in a tight dress, and I have to wait at home when he has enough fun with her and deigns to come back to me. Bastard. I hate him. I hate them both. Putting the glass on the table, Amaia burst into tears. "I can't take it. We've been together for so many years, and he wipes his feet on me. I want revenge on him. I want to make sure he stays with nothing. I want him to have no time to think about naked girls, solving endless problems. I want them to walk away from him, seeing what a miserable pauper he's become. Clara didn't stop her friend from talking. She knew she needed to let off steam. So she waited until Amaia calmed down and started to think clearly. It took a while, but now there was determination on her face. Amaia, if this is so important for you, you must get proof, real proof, to be accepted in court, said Clara persuasively. But how can I get it? To do that I need to follow him. How am I supposed to do that? I have no experience, Amaia said thoughtfully. Well, why should you do it yourself? Her friend laughed. What are private investigators for, then? There are a lot of such ads on the internet. You just need to choose the right one. Well, why not? Amaia got the idea. A private investigator? Let's do that right now. Women took the laptop and began to browse ads for private investigator services. Soon their attention was attracted by the following ad: professional surveillance of spouses. Photo and video evidence. With a guarantee. Alvaro. It looks promising, Clara glanced at her friend. Amaia smiled grimly, looking at the monitor. I really need this to be done in a very professional way, the woman said. Well, what's his name, Alvaro? Okay, Alvaro. I want to solve this problem once and for all. The next day, Clara and Amaia drove together to the meeting with that investigator. He turned out to be a young, handsome man with a fit body and deep dark eyes. Clara stayed in the car, and Amaia went into the mall to talk in neutral territory. Here's my husband's photo. She showed the photo on her phone and sent it to the investigator. I need you to track him literally minute by minute. I need to know where, why, with whom, and for how long he went. What he was doing, and so on. Basically, I need all the information. Anything you can find out about my husband. Will do. What form of report do you need? Alvaro asked. Amaia was confused. Well, you mentioned that you would provide photo and video evidence. If you can also get some business papers, that would also be very helpful. In short, I need everything. Anyway, here's the first payment, and let's see what you can find. All right. The investigator wrote something in his notebook and smiled at the woman. Wait for news, but no sooner than a week from now. It may take even longer, considering who your spouse is. Sure, I understand it. I will wait as long as it takes, Amaia replied with dignity. But I want you to get everything possible. This is no joke to me. This is really important. The man assured her he would do his best. After saying goodbye to him, Amaia went back to her friend and reported, I hope everything will turn out the way I expect it to. I described the situation to him, and he promised to do his best. Let's see what he can do. I hope he won't let us down, Clara replied. But Clara was haunted by strange doubts, as if her friend had made an irreparable mistake. Antonio's birthday party was in 2 weeks. Amaia worked very hard to prepare a celebration. It was not a banal family dinner. She wanted to do something special and mind-blowing, to take everyone's breath away so that everyone would say, wow. She especially wanted to impress Antonio, so she was preparing a surprise for his birthday. 3 days before the event, Amaia got a call from Alvaro, who offered to meet and review the results of his work. Amaia was just finishing discussing food and drinks for the party. The celebration will take place in the best restaurant in the city, so everything should be perfect. The woman made a long list of guests, which included not only friends, acquaintances, and relatives. A separate category of guests were colleagues and business partners of her husband, and even some of his high-ranking subordinates. All in all, a lot of people were expected, and Amaia was in a very festive mood. Well, here's the situation, Amaia, the investigator began his story. I have been following your husband for almost 2 weeks, and I have found a lot of evidence of his adultery. Currently, he is seeing a young woman named Ivana. She is much younger than him and is known as a hunter of rich men. But, apparently, your husband is absolutely fine with that. Amaia, holding her breath, listened to the fact that her husband is paying rent for his mistress' apartment in a luxury residential area not far from his office. That he had bought her a car and traveled abroad with her several times. He told Amaia he went to sign contracts with new partners. He paid for her membership cards to an expensive spa and fitness center. Not to mention the fact that he fully pays for her luxury lifestyle and all the little things she buys every single day. Your husband is hiding pretty well, Alvaro went on with his story. It took a lot of work for me to get close to him. But I got all the evidence, it's on a flash drive. Some of it is on my phone. Okay, Amaia replied after a moment's hesitation. Please send everything you got to my phone. And I'll take care of the rest myself. Sure, I will send you everything. The investigator put the envelope with his feet in his pocket. They said goodbye, and Amaia, full of desire to get fair revenge, drove home. She made grand plans in her head. How she would make a mockery of Antonio and that stupid girl in front of his friends and colleagues, and how he would be left with nothing. The woman had good reason to wish for such an outcome. Before the wedding, she and Antonio signed a marriage contract, and if either of them is caught cheating, they will lose almost everything. Antonio would have to pay off a huge sum of money to his wife, and Amaia would lose almost all of her father's inheritance. So the fact of adultery made public did not bode well for either of them, and Amaia knew how high the stakes were in this risky game. For the first time, Amaia was glad that she was home alone. She had enough time to make a video presentation in honor of her unfaithful spouse. And she would show her creation to all the guests with a sweet smile. The woman anticipated the pleasure she would experience watching her husband's stupid, shocked face as the naughty footage of him was shown in front of everyone. Oh yes, it would be hilarious. Amaia, after spending the entire night creating the presentation, decided to focus the next day on herself. In the morning she went to the swimming pool. After that, she had a massage and then went to get her nails done. Relaxed and cheerful, she felt full of energy, ready to battle all her husband's mistresses. The hair, the dress, the shoes, everything was perfect. And Amaia knew it. Politely smiling at the doorman, who never took his eyes off her, the woman slowly entered the restaurant where the event was about to begin. She was sure she would eclipse all the ladies there. But the attention of those present was riveted on the young woman sitting next to Antonio. She acted as if she were his wife and if she had the right to be with him that night. The graceful, long-legged Ivana looked stunning in a dress that hid almost nothing from prying eyes. Antonio enjoyed the attention of those around him. Everyone looked at Ivana. Antonio only nodded when he saw his wife enter the restaurant. Bastard! The woman cursed her husband in her mind. Her husband had the nerve to invite his mistress to the party, even though there were family members and other people who were much closer to him than this prostitute. Amaia thought that she didn't even have to waste her time meeting with the investigator and looking for dirt, because her husband came out in public with his mistress himself, thus confirming the fact of adultery. Still, it wasn't for nothing, though. Amaia looked around at the guests and smiled. Soon they would know everything and see in detail what Antonio was doing with his irresistible beauty, whom almost all men devoured with their eyes. Amaia looked at her rival indifferently. A cold hatred was waiting deep inside her soul. It's okay, soon this stupid girl will get what she deserves. She's going to regret she was born into the world. Revenge is a dish served cold. These words pulsed in Amaia's mind, the meaning of which was revealed to her in a new way. She felt as if a volcano crater ready to burst had been sprinkled on top with a thin layer of white snow. And it only seemed that everything was fine. The moment would come and there would be a powerful explosion that would blow everything away. Meanwhile, the fun was just about to begin. The guests ate, sang, danced, and participated in various contests. Antonio did not even look at Amaia the whole time, totally absorbed by Ivana and her charms. The woman decided that it was time to take decisive action. Rising from her seat, she went to a separate room and inserted a flash drive into the projector. Yes, it was the flash drive Alvaro gave her. Great, it was the perfect time to see what was on it. Taking the microphone with trembling hands and trying to speak naturally, Amaia began. Dear guests, I am pleased to welcome you to the birthday party dedicated to my beloved husband, Antonio. Dear, we are all here with one goal, to congratulate you on such a momentous occasion. And for my part, I would like to give you a little surprise, a very interesting documentary. I hope our guests, and especially you, will enjoy it. Everyone applauded. Antonio raised his hand and sent his wife an air kiss, to which she responded with a radiant smile. Amaia did not take her eyes off his face. She was sure that he could hardly contain his anger. But instead, Antonio smiled happily. Well, not happily, but defiantly, provocatively, as if he were mocking her. Amaia froze when she saw that the other guests were behaving as if nothing had happened. Antonio walked up to his wife, hugged her, and kissed her in front of everyone. His words shocked the woman. Honey, that was amazing, such a nice surprise. I didn't even expect it. Amaia turned around in panic and saw a slideshow of their old photos. Here they were on vacation during their honeymoon 10 years ago. Here were funny shots of Antonio buried up to his neck in the sand while Amaia painted his face with sunscreen. Here they were both on a lounge chair by the pool. Another photo shows them hugging near a Christmas tree. What the hell is going on? While Amaia was trying to figure out how the flash drive had been switched, her husband, still smiling dazzlingly, grabbed her arm roughly and painfully and hissed, "Sit down right now and keep your mouth shut, and don't you dare say any word until the party's over. Do you understand?" The guests didn't understand a thing. They kept applauding and thanking her for such sweet footage. Antonio was basking in the rays of glory and admiration. He was so self-confident, so irresistible, and dangerous. Amaia felt a chill begin to run through her. How could this have happened? The torture continued the entire time the party was going on. Amaia thanked the guests for coming, then got in the car next to her husband and they drove home in silence. She realized for the first time that she was afraid of him. Truly afraid and unsure of what to do. As soon as they crossed the threshold, the mask of complacency disappeared from Antonio's face, and he gave Amaia a slap that almost made her fall. Looking into the face of a frightened woman with red bloodshot eyes, Antonio yelled, "What the hell was that? Did you think I was so stupid that I wouldn't know anything? That I would never guess anything?" Amaia understood only one thing: her husband was ahead of her. In everything. Somehow he had found out about her plans first and struck before she knew what was happening. But how? "Sit down, dear," Antonio said mockingly, tossing Amaia onto the wide leather sofa in the living room. She hurt her back, but she didn't dare cry. She knew that it would only make him angrier and it would be hard to predict what could happen next. Leaning over Amaia, shrunken into a lump, the man spoke slowly. "I guess you didn't know that I've been tracking you for the whole 10 years of our married life. I know everything you do, and I have a minute-by-minute report of every day." "What? You've been spying on me all the time?" The woman was shocked. Her reaction was more than sincere. But her husband was not surprised. With a wry grin, Antonio continued, "What was I supposed to do? The marriage contract, damn it. I had to take precautions, and thank God I thought of it before you did. There's so much dirt on you, I could get you out of my life, leave you with nothing any minute. Why didn't you do that before if you had a chance?" Amaia asked in a trembling voice. "Well, at least out of respect for your late father," her husband replied mockingly. "And I felt pity for you. You have never worked, and you are not adapted to life. All you can do is work in beauty salons and spas. That's it. That's all you're good at. You're just a silly housewife who lived her whole life on her husband's money. And you never learned how to be grateful. But your behavior today changes everything, including my good attitude toward you." He walked over to the safe hidden in the wall behind the painting, opened it, and pulled out a paper bag and a stack of documents. Amaia followed him with eyes full of horror. And Antonio smiled at his thoughts as if what was happening now was the most pleasant event in his life. Suddenly, the woman saw several bundles of $100 bills on a table, tied with a paper ribbon. Continuing to smile, Antonio turned to Amaia. "Well, there you go, darling. As you can see, I wasn't lying. This compromising material is enough to ruin both your reputation and the reputation of your late father. Though he was a good man. Take this money, it's payment for all the good things we had. And now get out of my life, forever." "What is it?" Amaia asked fearfully as her husband held the papers up to her face. "The divorce papers. It says that you are satisfied with the compensation I just gave you. And you have no claims against me, neither moral nor material. Sign it and get out of here. I'm tired. I want to relax in silence." "No, I will not sign it." Amaia rose and pushed her husband's hand away. "You will not make me do it." "No." Her husband shrugged and clapped his hands. "You are so stupid," he said with a sigh. "Platon, explain to the lady what she must do. Do it in a clear and not too traumatic way." Platon had been her husband's personal assistant and bodyguard for the last 5 years. They seemed to be good friends. Without saying a word, the man took a gun out of his pocket and pointed it at the head of Amaia, who was terrified. "If you continue to behave like this, tomorrow everyone will express their sympathy for the sudden suicide of his wife," the bodyguard spoke mockingly. "A huge concentration of alcohol and drugs will be found in your blood. Everybody will think you have had too much to drink and have done such a stupid thing while intoxicated." The warning was more than persuasive, and Amaia flinched and silently signed the piece of paper that Platon had helpfully slipped under her arm. Seeing her signature, the man replied, "Thank you, my sweetie. Well, now it is time for you to go." "Antonio, where should I go in the middle of the night?" Woman begged her husband, who indifferently sipped cognac from a big glass. Antonio grinned. "I don't care. Do what you want and go wherever you want. Honestly, I don't care anymore." Amaia, as if in a fog, packed a small bag with her belongings, where she shoved the money and her ID. Then she went out the gate of the mansion. Only when she was outside did the woman come to her senses. Amaia began to knock on the door, shouting and calling for Antonio. But there was no answer. "Antonio, don't, please. Let me in. Where should I go?" the woman shouted. Realizing that it was to no avail, Amaia took out her phone and dialed the number of the cab service. A calm female voice informed her that the car would be there soon, and Amaia dropped down onto the cold stone floor with no energy. Soon. Good. She decided to go to the hotel to recover and to think about everything. She had not expected her husband to act so violently and rapidly. Apparently, he had long been itching to get rid of her. And tonight was a very convenient opportunity to implement the plans into reality. The cab driver looked at the passenger, who sobbed all the way without stopping, but did not ask any questions. He only asked which hotel she was going to. Amaia shuddered at such a simple question. "Where?" "Probably to the Continental," she said. The woman did not hear the driver say, "Okay, let's go to the Continental if you have the extra money." The Continental was one of the most expensive and prestigious hotels in the city. But all Amaia remembered was that it was very comfortable and beautiful. Her husband had paid for all these pleasures before, but now she would have to live on her own. But now she did not think about money. Her soul wanted only one thing, to be alone with her worries, to disconnect from the outside world. When she arrived at the hotel, the woman went up to her favorite room and ordered a bottle of wine. After a long bath, Amaia relaxed on the couch and, staring at the TV, drank the entire bottle. She didn't feel intoxicated, just sleepy. Thinking it would be better in the morning, Amaia fell asleep. Waking up was unpleasant, her head ached wildly, and her mouth tasted disgusting and bitter. "God, what do I look like?" Amaia muttered, looking in the mirror. She looked up at a woman with a puffy face and unfocused gaze, her hair disheveled, and dark circles under her eyes. An ethereal beauty. Amaia muttered and lazily made her way to the bathroom. After a cold shower and a quick workout, she felt much better. But what should she do now? She didn't like to eat breakfast, preferring to have just a cup of black coffee without sugar. What a bastard! Amaia remembered that a few hours before that ill-fated night she had met with that stupid investigator Alvaro. It was he who assured her that he had collected ironclad evidence of her husband's guilt. But this is the result. He's not answering his phone. He's completely off the grid. Amaia decided she'd figure it all out, but a little later. After a quick lunch, she went to a fashion boutique to buy some clothes. She might be without a husband now, but that didn't mean she had to look like a stray cat. Catching strange looks from the people around her, Amaia realized that from now on her life has changed drastically. Especially after she called her close friend Clara and asked her to meet. As the women sat down at the table, Clara called the waiter over and smiled. "Am I right in assuming that you are a single, wealthy woman now? Let's drink to you, my dear." 3 times wealthy and single, Amaia said wearily. And her friend looked at her with surprise. "What happened? Did I say something wrong?" "That's right, I'm single now. I signed divorce papers yesterday. But now I only have what's with me right now, including even my clothes." Amaia answered bitterly, pouring tears. "He gave me some money, but what should I do next? This stupid investigator has screwed me, you know?" Clara listened to her friend's story in shock. She had nothing to say, although Clara usually always found a comment. "What are you going to do now?" She turned to Amaia. She shrugged her shoulders vaguely. "What if I had a chance to get revenge on him someday? This bastard, I'm talking about my husband, has been spying on me for the last 10 years. As he said, it was enough to eat me alive." Clara listened sympathetically, but by the look on her face, Amaia realized that the relationship between them was no longer the same. It was as if something had been erased. As Clara got into the cab, Amaia caught herself thinking that it was the bottom. It couldn't get any worse. Amaia wasn't used to denying herself anything. Like before her divorce, she lived the good life, eating at expensive restaurants and visiting her favorite salons and exhibitions. But one day she discovered that the money Antonio had given her was almost gone, and the woman had to move out of the expensive apartment and move into a more modest dwelling. And what's next? Amaia said to herself, looking at the thin wad of bills lying on the table. I have to get a job, but where should I go? She was still beautiful and slim. But she had no work experience because she had never worked. When she got married, she made it her goal to stay beautiful and please her husband's eyes. But now there was no need for that. Antonio had never told her that she needed to get a job. He even spoke with some disdain of men whose wives worked. Except that back then nobody thought that pampered Amaia would have to get a job. She went to many stores and catering companies and eventually managed to get a job as a waitress in a good cafe. The owner liked her for her knowledge of etiquette and manners, so he instructed her to take a week's internship and start working. Amaia was very unaccustomed to it, and by the end of the day, she couldn't feel her legs and back. Lying awake on the uncomfortable bed, different from her previous bed, Amaia thought about the strange twists and turns of life's circumstances. Even Clara, to whom she'd been willing to trust her own life, wasn't eager to keep in touch. It was understandable because she could hang out with Amaia, have fun, and go to luxury restaurants before. But now she was among those who were called hopeless. All her friends gradually distanced themselves and stopped answering Amaia's texts and phone calls. They knew that instead of a luxurious mansion, the woman was forced to live in a miserable rented room somewhere in a low-income neighborhood. And that she had no money, so why would they want to be friends with someone with no money? Amaia had already been working as a waitress for 2 months. One day when she approached the table with a guest, the woman froze in shock. Then she suddenly attacked him with her fists. The man put up his hands trying to defend himself and convince Amaia to stop. "Miss, are you out of your mind? Why are you doing this to me? How can you even dare to ask, you bastard?" Amaia was ready to tear him to pieces. It was Detective Alvaro. When he recognized the woman, he said to the manager, who came running at the shouting, "I'm sorry, it's all right. Everything is all right. It was your fault." Amaia kept screaming, "I lost everything because of you. Everything, do you understand? I have nothing. Please, take a sit." Alvaro invited the woman to sit down at his table, and Amaia obediently sat down next to him. "You see, I was left with nothing. My husband kicked me out, divorced me, and now I'm stuck in this shithole, wiping tables." Amaia dropped her head on the table and cried even louder. "No one wants to communicate with me. All my friends and acquaintances scattered like cockroaches when they see me. I'm like a plague to them, like a leper." "I understand," the investigator said sympathetically. "I've had about the same thing happen to me." Alvaro said that before the meeting with Amaia, he had been caught by several men. One of them was Platon, who put a gun under his ribs and ordered him to give him all the materials he had collected. "In general, I was given a clear message that if I showed up, I would be dead. You know that in such a situation there is not much of a choice. I decided to get out of the city for a while and came back recently. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen, but we'll figure something out. I promise." "Will we?" Amaia grinned. "How can you think of anything if you are in danger, too? Doesn't your husband have any weaknesses?" The investigator said. "There must be something he doesn't want to expose. We just have to figure out what it is and how to use it properly. You know, I am ready to do a lot. I'm ready to do everything." Amaia spoke fervently, wiping away her tears. "Antonio is sure he is invincible. But I want to get revenge on him for his heinous betrayal. For the humiliation I endured. He trampled our family life and put an end to it long before I realized that something was wrong. And he has to pay for it because traitors can never be forgiven." "I completely understand you," Alvaro nodded. He did not lie about that. He had once been a victim of deception by the woman he loved. He almost killed himself when he found out the truth. After this story, the man decided to start working in this field to help deceived and humiliated people. Amaia only knew one thing: she could and must do something to prevent Antonio from enjoying the results of his own betrayal with impunity. The woman noticed that her husband never made public the information about the divorce, though he loved to inform about the events in his life. He was not even ashamed to bring this Ivana to his birthday party to show who he was spending his time with. Alvaro came to the cafe several times after Amaia's shift was over. Sitting across from Amaia, the man discussed what could be done about their situation. "The only thing I can think of is to leak information about your ex to his competitors," the investigator said thoughtfully. "But what would be interesting to them? There's nothing about him that would draw their attention." "Why not?" Amaia grinned. "You just don't know Antonio well enough. He is obsessed with his own image of the perfect man. He still hasn't told anyone that he divorced his wife after 10 years of marriage. Because he deals with conservative personalities who think that a divorced partner is not trustworthy. They would consider him a traitor. Well, on the other hand, even the president is divorced. What's wrong with that?" Alvaro was surprised. The president, unlike Antonio, has a lot of power. Whether they want to or not, they have to work with him, despite their personal beliefs. And Antonio has a different environment. They are clinging to their perceptions and values, and divorce has no place in that environment. Especially if you show them the circumstances under which the divorce occurred, Alvaro realized. If you tell them that he left you with nothing, took away all your inheritance, and kicked you out of the house, their trust in him can be damaged. But not completely ruined. We need something else. "I think I know something," Amaia said slowly. For more than a year, Antonio has been communicating with a very rich and powerful man. He wants to sign a contract with him. He's trying to charm him in any possible way. But the man is still waiting. He wants to see Antonio's true face, whether he is really worthy to sign a contract with him. I've heard that this man is very careful about his reputation and doesn't want to do business with those who can harm it. So, if Antonio shows his bad side, he will lose the contract? Alvaro understood. His face brightened. Not bad. We already have something to work with. I'll think about it some more. Who else has a desire for revenge against my ex-husband? Amaia said. Antonio didn't care about the means to reach his goals, and sometimes he would say things that I just didn't take seriously, thinking that he was speaking on emotion, exaggerating. After work, Amaia went to an internet cafe where she searched for everything she could find about her ex-husband. The woman was convinced that she was right about Antonio. He never renewed his marital status. Her ex-husband, even coming to the formal events with the long-legged Ivana, voiced the reason for his wife's absence by her constant illness. He said he had a reliable assistant, Ivana, who only smiled sweetly into the camera and said her memorized phrases in a sweet voice. Amaia was convinced at the first meeting that her husband's mistress was incapable of expressing her own thoughts. She didn't say a word, but she kept her eyes on Antonio. Her face expressed her complete willingness to do anything her lover demanded of her. So there was nothing else to count on. Ivana glimpsed several times in the video with Antonio, and in all the shots she either smiled or said hello with a stupid expression on her face. Wow, this is something interesting, thought Amaia as she read the latest news. It said that a famous businessman, Antonio Salas, had begun a lawsuit against his former business partner for owning some territory they used to share. After the division of the company, Antonio got most of the assets. Amaia's husband strongly disagreed with that. He wanted to get everything. He spied vigorously against his rival, but so far he had not obtained anything significant. Consequently, Antonio's rival wouldn't mind finding something compromising either. If those with whom Antonio was doing business now learned something unpleasant and untrustworthy about her ex-husband, they would break off all relations with him. Losing such clients was no joke. And Antonio tried with all his might to protect his reputation so as not to be among the losers. Well, all or nothing, Amaia told herself, daring to offer her services to her ex-husband's main rival. She called Martino Escasina to make an appointment. So you want to take revenge on your ex-husband with my hands? The man spoke thoughtfully, looking at Amaia intently. She did not hide it. It's just a mutually beneficial offer. You want to get rid of him too, don't you? Amaia kept her gaze on his face. I know the way Antonio thinks. More than once I've managed to find things in documents that I wasn't supposed to see. I can find things that would surely draw your attention, and he certainly has secrets that he would prefer to keep quiet about. That's right, everyone in our business has such secrets, Martino suddenly agreed. Let me be clear, I'm not too picky about who and how makes money. But there is a line that cannot be crossed because it is the ultimate meanness. That's what you think. If so, you have a code of honors. Congratulations. Amaia grinned. But Antonio has no such code. He was not ashamed to bring his mistress to his birthday party and to force me to sign the divorce papers threatening to kill me. So, if you were in my shoes, you would have a good reason not to worry about this code. So what can you offer? Martino asked coldly. He was figuring out how he could benefit from this unexpected cooperation. I can break into my ex-husband's office and take any information that might be useful to you. Obviously, not for nothing, the woman said quietly. There was a strange expression in Martino's eyes. So you're willing to commit such a serious crime? Let's just not call it a crime, Amaia said. She knew by his reaction that she had succeeded in making him curious. What do you need? If so, let's discuss it, the man replied. For example, I need some very important information concerning the supply of electronic equipment, but Antonio did not give me any data at the time. I had to pay for the last deliveries without having the complete technical documentation. I believe that he deliberately misled me by not giving me a complete list of contractors. So, he stole some assets from me and is taking advantage of that while I'm trying to collect documents for the trial. And all of this is in his office, Amaia answered without hesitation. How can you be so sure? Martino was surprised. Antonio never keeps anything valuable at home. For him, the office is his personal fortress. It's packed with all kinds of alarms and cameras, not to mention security guards. You certainly know Antonio better. Martino looked at her with interest and then stopped talking. He knew very well what he was getting into. Though, he had no written or verbal agreement with her about the amount and nature of the reward if her venture succeeded. If she fails, he doesn't have to take responsibility for what happened. What do you want in return? Martino asked. The woman smiled radiantly. I want to have some rest. I crave it with all my being. All right. It's time to prepare for Operation Vengeance. Wish me luck, gentlemen. It's a good thing I'm not married, Martino muttered after she left. He had never thought of binding himself to the bonds of marriage. He was raising a son by one of his mistresses. She left him the child and disappeared with a generous payoff. Martino was quite happy with his situation as a single father, and after the story with Amaia, he became convinced that he was not destined for married life. The woman called Alvaro and offered to meet to discuss the details. Basically, you have to wait for me in the car, so I get out and immediately disappear. And then you have to deliver the compromising material to a certain address. I'll tell you when the address later. The investigator listened to her suggestion with interest and made a couple of corrections. They only needed to wait another day for her husband's company to start preparing for the anniversary. Then there would be general chaos in the office. Amaia had witnessed it more than once. That's exactly how it turned out. Outside the office, she saw a crowd of employees with boxes and folders in their hands standing near the entrance, waiting patiently for the pass system to work. Amaia slipped to the side, picked up a large box of colored files, and confidently joined the young employees. No one knew her, and that was a good thing. After walking to the end of the corridor on the upper floor, the woman put the box aside and walked to her husband's office. Antonio was very surprised at the sight of his ex-wife. You? Why are you here? He asked, glancing at the door. Amaia was holding a large cup of caramel latte, which Antonio loved. Relax, honey, she grinned. It's just that there's a lot of buzz in the media about the company's anniversary, so I came by to congratulate you. We may not be together, but I can't get 10 years of our life together out of my mind that easily. How's your lovely Ivana doing? Didn't she leave you for someone richer than you? His face showed obvious dissatisfaction. Leave Ivana alone, okay? What are you doing here? Coffee? Amaia smiled and sat on Antonio's lap as if nothing had happened. He jerked in surprise, knocking the cup out of his ex-wife's hands, and the coffee spilled on Antonio's pants and shirt. Amaia jumped up with a frightened face. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll get a napkin now. You're as clumsy as before, like a fat cow. Antonio spoke with disgust. Why did you come? I just wanted to talk to you, Amaia answered quietly. Antonio, I have nothing to live on, you know? Maybe you could help me? I need some money. I will give you money, but after that, you have to get out of here. I don't want to see you. Antonio answered angrily, while Amaia wiped the puddle on the floor under his chair with a napkin. Stay here and do not touch anything, stupid. As soon as he stepped out, Amaia rushed to his desk, clutching a small electronic key card. It was a custom-made, single copy. The woman instantly opened the safe under the desk and pulled out a flash drive that contained important data with copies of documents. She knew exactly what she had to take from the safe. Antonio had once yelled at the faithful Platon after he left this flash on the desk. If only this thing ends up in the wrong hands, you and I will be buried. But I left it on your desk, Platon muttered, and Antonio responded by shouting, You can't leave it even on my desk. It should be locked in my safe, you dumbass. Antonio came a few minutes later when Amaia put everything back in its place. She approached her ex with an embarrassed look and took the money from his hands. "Thank you." Without giving the man a moment's hesitation, Amaia hugged him and kissed him passionately. At the same time, she put the key in his shirt pocket and left, escorted by her ex's surprised gaze. In the elevator, the woman called Alvaro. "Are you ready?" After thinking about it for a while, Amaia changed her mind at the last minute. She taped the flash drive to the bottom of the sink in the women's bathroom, just in case someone found it missing right away. Platon was like a bloodhound. He'd look right away and could find something out. And there was no hope for Alvaro. He feared for his life. "Where's the flash drive?" Alvaro asked as they were driving in the car. "In a safe place. It is better for you not to know. In case Platon attacks you again," the woman answered. A few days after the anniversary, Antonio decided to send another commercial offer to potential partners. However, he did not receive a reply to any of the messages. Soon Martino called him and mockingly suggested, "Antonio, you'd better give me the disputed assets, because you know, the world situation is unstable, you can lose everything. Especially if you lost important documentation." "What do you mean?" Antonio asked in a tense voice. He realized that Martino must have a good reason for making such an offer. Meanwhile, Amaia was enjoying the warmth of the sun at a luxurious resort. She went there as soon as she handed the flash drive to Martino and two other competitors. They were so excited by the information they received that they immediately agreed to pay a tidy sum to the woman. Alvaro also moved to another city, leaving no information about his location. "Antonio, honey, are we going to the restaurant tonight?" Ivana's whimsical voice stabbed Amaia's ex-husband's ears. The man turned to Ivana and looked coldly at her. "Ivana, it's not a good time to go to a restaurant. I'm very busy," he replied. The girl wrinkled her nose. She always did that when she didn't like something. Antonio used to like it madly when she did that, but now it annoyed him. After the disclosure of fraudulent deals involving Antonio, the circle of business partners shrank sharply and continued to shrink. He went through interrogations and had to write a testimony to the tax authorities and other organizations. It seemed that this mess would never end. And at that very moment, Ivana decided that she wanted to have some fun. "Go out with someone else, with your friends," the man suggested peacefully. "Why do I have to go with my friends when I have you?" Ivana snorted. "Come on, Antonio, don't be such a drag. Let's go out. I am terribly bored being stuck in four walls." "Then go out by yourself." Antonio shouted deafeningly, which made Ivana frightened and shut up. "Bored? Really? Do you think I have to entertain you day and night, whenever you want? Am I a clown or something?" Ivana looked at him indignantly and left the room. She began to pack, and the man didn't try to hold her back. A year after this story, there was almost no mention of Antonio. Competitors bought up his company for a mere pittance, and he was left with nothing. But Amaia could not complain about her destiny. She took revenge on her husband, took a break from the hardships she had endured, and returned to her hometown to start a new life. Amaia decided to buy a beauty salon so she could earn her own money. She was good at the specifics of such facilities and succeeded in developing her business. The woman did not even think about her ex-husband. Sometimes she met Alvaro on social media. He was also not bad, and he could say that he was lucky enough with his personal life. The detective met the woman of his dreams and was going to get married.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.